Annyeonghaseyo, my beautiful people. Welcome to The Alternate Point of View. I am your host, Tracy Lee. Tonight, we are going to talk about a very tragic event that happened in 1984 in India. It is the Bhopal gas leak disaster. If you have not heard of this, this is going to be one for the record books. And I would say probably one that is the worst, maybe even worse than Chernobyl. And it's right up there with Chernobyl. So let's get started and dig into this story. So the Bhopal disaster, or Bhopal gas tragedy as it is called, is the worst industrial disaster where a gas leak caused the immediate deaths of nearly 4,000 victims in December of 1984. The accident happened in the Carbide India Limited UCIL pesticide plant in Madhya Pradesh, India. 500,000 residents in the surrounding towns were exposed to methyl isocyanate. I want to make sure I say that right. Isocyanate, or MIC. Now, if you don't know what this is what farmers use as a pesticide in their fields. And this is a huge company, okay, that used this plant in India to make this pesticide. So while the official number of the immediate deaths was counted as 2,259 in 2008, the government paid a compensation to 3,787 victims' families that were killed in the accident. There were 558,125 injured people, of which 3,900 people were permanently disabled. However, reports and experts estimate that 8,000 people died within 2 weeks of the incident, while at least 8,000 more people have died since due to the exposure to the gas. This place was built in 1969 to produce pesticide 7, brand name for carbaryl. That's a mouthful. It started producing MIC in 1979. In the 1970s, the Indian government encouraged foreign companies to invest in India. Union Carbide Corporation started producing pesticide carbaryl in Bhopal, MP, India, creating an Indian subsidiary, Union Carbide Corporation India. So what this meant for India was jobs, right? They were super excited about having jobs. They were excited about having corporations come to India. And this was a big deal. It was cheap for these corporations to come and have this made. So the process was that the Bhopal plant reacted methylamine with phosgene to form MIC, which then reacted with 1-naphthol to form the final pesticide carbaryl. So if any of you guys out there are chemical engineers or scientists or anything, because as you can tell, I'm definitely not, but this is a story that has fascinated me because as soon as the gas leak happened, I mean, thousands of people died instantly. They had no choice. Like, it literally just killed thousands of people, and they didn't even know it was going to happen. So, the people who died didn't know it was going to happen. We'll get deeper into that in a minute. However, other manufacturers stopped using MIC, incurring more cost, but the reason was public safety. MIC is incredibly deadly. And anyway, in the early 80s, the demand for pesticides had fallen. So it wasn't like it was a need for it anymore. And so there was a lot of MIC just lying around at the Bhopal plant. So the preceding events before this accident happened, in 1976, the trade unions filed complaints about the pollution in the plant. Then in 1981, a worker was carrying out maintenance work at one of the pipes when he got splashed with phosgene. He removed his mask in a panic, resulting in him inhaling the toxic phosgene gas and eventually his death 3 days later. 3 days later. Journalist Rajkumar Keswani investigated and published and exposed in the local paper, trying to warn the residents of this impending disaster because he knew this was bound to happen. Then in January of 1982, phosgene gas leaked out and affected 24 workers who had been hospitalized. They weren't wearing any protective gear. And you'll see a lot of this in third world countries. It's hard to get this protective gear. Hard hats weren't even considered. Construction going on hundreds of feet in the air, wearing gloves and masks. It just wasn't happening. They weren't following safety measures like we follow here in this country. So anyway, just the following month in February, MIC leaked, engulfing 18 workers. Then in August, a chemical engineer was exposed to MIC directly, which resulted in 30% of his body burned. So there was a pattern. Like before this happened in December, there was already incidences happening and occurring where people were dying, they were being exposed, there were third-degree burns, they were seeing that there were no safety measures being taken, and yet they still continued to do this because there were profits over safety, profits over lives, even though there wasn't a demand for this pesticide anymore. But they had already invested in this plant in India, so they weren't about to give it up. And not to mention that this plant was not making any money anymore, right? This plant was not turning over any profit. So there were many leaks from 1983 to 1984, including MIC, chlorine, phosgene, carbon tetrachloride, and even methylamine. Sometimes they were all mixed up, resulting in severe reactions. So we can establish this was a very unsafe place for people to work, and they were cutting corners on human safety. So the safety features, according to the employees, several months before the event of December 3rd, 1984, managers decommissioned a refrigeration unit that was for the sole purpose of cooling methyl isocyanate, MIC, a highly flammable liquid, easily vaporizes upon exposure to the air. It is colorless. It has a strong odor. Its main application is as a chemical intermediate in the manufacturing of pesticides, as we have already talked about. Shutting down the cooling process was against the plant procedures, but they did it to cut corners. When the 30-ton refrigeration unit was shut down, electricity was saved, and the freon in the coils of the cooling unit was pumped out to be used elsewhere in the plant. So they were just cutting corners in all different ways and directions in order to save money. Because as I stated before, this plant was not making profit. It wasn't making money. And people's lives were not as important as trying to salvage what they could of this company and salvage as much of the MIC as they could. Well, plant employees kept reporting incidents, and it kept getting ignored and brushed under the rug because, you know, keep in mind, you're in a third world country. You're in a country that there are no real labor laws in place. There are no real anything in place. They're just happy to have jobs, okay? They're just happy to have foreign investors in their country. So it turns out that the cooling unit was completely decommissioned. The flare tower that has to burn off the excess gases, a major safety feature, had been inoperable for over 6 days. A 4-foot pipe section was to be replaced and maintenance would take 4 hours. In such factories, a gas cleaning scrubber is used to neutralize harmful gases. The plant's vent gas scrubber had been down since October 22nd. Now, keep in mind, this happened on December 3rd. So this thing was down since October 22nd. There was no SOP, which is a standard operating procedure for the gas scrubber vent to not be continuously operating. So the spray system to contain chemical leaks fell short and couldn't reach the required heights. So again, still, they had no backup plan for if there were to be a leak. The plant also didn't follow the rules about moving dangerous liquid to a spare tank. They literally had nothing. They had nothing. So with all of the things that they had, the warning signs, I mean, I don't know how you can get any more warning signs other than death to happen to show that this is not a safe working environment. But all the way up until the fateful night, okay, here we are at December 2nd, it's discovered. At 11:30 p.m., the supervisor, Shaquille Qureshi, ignored the warning on the gauge indicating that the pressure is one of 3 methyl isocyanate storage tanks had risen 5-fold in 1 hour. Those who are aware of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster can probably recall that they ignored the warning signs too. The leak started when a worker was told to clean a pipe in a way that was against the rules with water. You should never mix those two. Okay, again, I'm not a scientist, but you don't put water in there. The employees in the methyl isocyanate facility, situated approximately 100 feet away from the control room, noticed a leak, resulting in their eyes becoming watery. Shaquille Qureshi ignored it because the instruments were faulty and often malfunctioned. So he ignored the situation because he'd seen this happen before with the instruments not saying the right thing. So he was like, it's no big deal. So what? Like, wow, are you serious right now? So operator V.N. Singh observed a liquid drip approximately 50 feet above the ground, along with some yellowish white gas in that vicinity, around 11:45. He went to the control room and informed Mr. Qureshi about the methyl isocyanate leak. He decided to deal with it after the next tea break, according to the workers who were present. But within an hour, the reaction inside the storage tank was out of control, y'all, out of control. In his defense, if there is one, Mr. Qureshi said in an interview that he had been told of a water leak, not an escape of methyl isocyanate. No one investigated the leak until after the tea ended, about 12:40 a.m. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but in India, they take their tea breaks pretty seriously. So tea break overtook a gas leak, okay? I mean, there you go. So there were 45 metric tons, or about 13,000 gallons of methyl isocyanate in the tank that leaked. According to the plant workers, that would mean that the tank was 87% full. The plant did not have a computer system, unlike the West Virginia plant. So again, here we are again with the United States plant having a lot more safety measures, a lot more everything than the plant in India. You can see where they cared less about the plant in India than they did about the one in the United States, because they have things like OSHA here in the United States that monitors how things are done, whereas in India they did not. So they have things like a manual here in the United States that they do not have in India. So in 1983, the staff at the methyl isolate plant was reduced from 112 operators per shift to 6. Despite having minimal automated equipment, several employees were worried, including Kamal K. Parikh, a chemical engineer with experience at the Bhopal plant since 1971, who clearly warned them that running the plant safely with only 6 people was not feasible. 6 people in a plant with chemicals. Apart from all of these violations, there were no public warning signs, a town full of people sleeping through the night. There were no effective public warnings about the disaster. The alarm that went off in the night of the accident was frequently used for various purposes, making it difficult to distinguish whether it was a routine drill or whether it was a biohazard, whether it was an emergency situation. No one knew, and it wasn't evident in the town. So there were at least 10 violations of standard procedures from both the parent corporation, UCC, and its Indian-run subsidiary, UCCI. Since there weren't proper safety drills or any training, so the town never had a drill, never knew anything. They weren't really concerned about this plant being there. They were just happy to have jobs, okay? They didn't realize that this plant was dangerous, that it was a possibility that there could be a major leak and that people would die instantaneously. So over 40 tons of gas leaked into the air, killing countless instantly. Local hospitals were soon overwhelmed with injured, and a crisis further compounded by a lack of knowledge of exactly what kind of gas they were dealing with, what the effects were, what the exposure time was, what MIC would do to the respiratory system, the eyes, the nose, the throat. They didn't know what that actually did to the body system. And so they didn't know if it was suffocating people, if it was tearing up their organs. They had no idea. So late in the night on December 2nd, 1984, Ghulam Daskadir, the deputy station master at Bhopal Railway Station, was wrapping up his usual duties. Little did he know a disaster was unfolding around him. Stepping out onto the platform number 1, he felt a sudden burning sensation in his eyes and noticed a commotion at the station entrance. Alarmed, Dastagir rushed to his boss's office, Harish Derv, only to discover a grim scene. Derv, along with a porter, had succumbed to toxic gas while attempting to guide an express train through without stopping. The poisonous fumes had already claimed the lives of 23 colleagues at the station. So this had gone literally all over the town into the train station, and now it's carrying passengers through the train station to another destination, y'all. So realizing the severity of the situation, Daskadir witnessed the arrival of another express train carrying 1,000 passengers, and despite the chaos and the toxic environment, he took swift action. Aware of the urgent need to protect these passengers, he instructed the available staff to clear the track, ensured the train departed 15 minutes earlier than scheduled. Despite struggling to breathe, Daskadir promptly informed nearby stations to halt all incoming trains to Bhopal. His quick thinking and decisive actions, even in the face of personal danger, played a crucial role in mitigating the impact of tragedy at Bhopal railway station that fateful night. If he had not done that, more people would have died because there were more trains coming into Bhopal. Bhopal is a very major area at that time. That's where people were coming in. So it was a major stop, and he stopped the trains from coming. So the aftermath of this disaster, where these thousands of people died, 4,000 people died instantly, 4,000 more people died in the aftermath, and moreover, there were over 500,000 people who had injuries, and then the survivors who didn't die suffered from babies being born deformed, There were people that had deformities. The pictures are unreal, y'all. It is so bad. And all the Indian government got out of this when they sued the company was settled for $470 million in compensation, y'all. $470 million. That's what they got, which is practically nothing compared to the substantial underestimated numbers of loss and health issues and hospitalizations and care and future care. And who knew what was going to happen going forward to the people, the later effects. So just to give you an idea, the early effects of this, the 0 to 6 months, the ocular, chemosis, redness, watering, ulcers, photophobia, respiratory, distress, pulmonary, edema, pneumonitis, pneumothorax, gastrointestinal, abdominal pain, anorexia, genetic increased chromosomal abnormalities, the deformities I was talking about, psychological, neurosis, anxiety states, adjustment reactions, neurobehavioral, impaired audio, visual, memory impaired, so many things, late effects, 6 months and onwards, ocular, persistent watering, more respiratory, reproductive, increased pregnancy loss, increased infant mortality, genetic, increased chromosomal abnormalities. The ongoing things that have been going on since this happened in the 1980s is still going on to this day. And this is all because of what happened at the Bhopal plant. There is a act that the Indian government implemented enacting the Bhopal Gas Leak Disaster Act to handle claims. But unfortunately, because they settled for the $470 million, which is chump change compared to what happened to these people in this town, over 500,000 people have suffered, and countless more even after. It is insane to know that that is all they got. I mean, when you look at 470 million settlement and over 500,000 people suffered just in that time, not to mention all the other people afterwards, that's not even $1 million a person. So you have to think they literally got nothing. And all of this, and then if you think about it also, this is a chemical that we are putting on our food, on our plants, on our farming. This is a chemical that we're making to put on, that our farmers are using, that literally killed thousands. So it's a fascinating tragedy. It's a horrific tragedy, and it was such a preventable tragedy. So if you haven't heard of the Bhopal disaster, gas leak tragedy, now you have, and I hope that you will understand, and maybe this will put things in perspective for us in America, and see how fortunate we are in so many areas, that we do have a lot of things in place for us here, whereas in other countries they do not. And just appreciate what you have each day, and hold your loved ones close, and tell each other that you love each other, and mean it when you do, because you never know. Like, these people had no warning. They had no understanding that this was going to happen to them. People literally died instantly. They lost their loved ones and their family members in just a moment. So this is a fascinating story. There's a Netflix film about it as well. And I hope that if you have any questions or anything, if I mispronounced a word, I apologize. If you have any knowledge of any of these chemicals, please feel free to leave that in the comments below. If anyone remembers this incident, let me know. I would love to hear any input anyone has. And if there's any other tragic events that you want to hear about, please put that in the comments as well. I thank you so much for listening and checking out this story, and I appreciate you following. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, comment, and share. Kamsahamnida.